University podcast. I'm your host, Michael Allison. Today's guest is Nicole Magic. She's an empowerment alchemist. She's been through a good bit of adversities in her life, divorce, homelessness, and some controversial things that tied to her faith when growing up. I can't wait to get into this conversation and hear all about her story. Let's go. Nicole Magic, welcome to the Overcome University podcast. Thank you for being here.
Michael, thank you for having me.
I am still fascinated about your last name being Magic, but let's get into this conversation here, man. You have an amazing story, Nicole. You know, I'm one that grew up in a household that was quite Christian based, faith based, and quite a few things was instilled in me and stuff like that. You had an interesting story in life where you're someone that's seen things, heard things, and you had an interesting upbringing. Can you tell us a little bit about your story, some of the adversities that you've been through?
Yeah, absolutely. I did grow up in a very Christian household, and there's a lot of great values that get instilled within that space, right?
Right.
There also were a lot of very rigid beliefs, and that's where I didn't fit in because I had a very intuitive nature about me. I could see auras, hear spirits, see them as well, and some of the things that I said were a little outside of the acceptable realm of that belief system. So it was a little bit of, okay, Nicole, don't say much, keep your mouth shut, and just, children are to be seen and not heard.
Right. I could imagine, growing up where you're not being able to be free or be yourself or be your true authentic self and how that could kind of like bottle you in. Can you talk a little bit about being in that space and being in that environment and what did it do to you just mentally as a kid growing up for yourself?
Yeah, with not being able to be your true authentic self, it stifles you into a space of constantly having to figure out what everybody else wants you to be and then being that to keep the peace so that you're not criticized, judged, rejected, abandoned, in a certain sense, whether it's emotional abandonment or whatever. And carrying that forward into adult life, it becomes much bigger challenges because the self-sabotage gets in the way, especially owning your own business and needing visibility, right? Because it wasn't safe for me to be visible as my authentic self when I was a kid. So I
Right.
had to overcome a lot of that stuff in the space of, okay, now you have to be more visible. Now you have to be heard in order to get that message out. And when it first started, I was invited on a bunch of radio shows. I hated my voice. Hated it growing up. So I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be on this radio show. And then people start saying, oh my God, Nicole, I really love your voice. I could listen to you all day. And I'm like, what?
it's
So
it's
there are a lot of challenges along the way, small and large.
it's crazy to hear you say that because I used to think the same thing about myself too. Because I'm from Jamaica, right? So I grew up speaking Patois. Then I came to America, and then I was trying to like learn the American language. Then I grew up in a neighborhood where is people that spoke Haitian or Creole, and then I also went to a neighborhood where there was Hispanic, so I learned Spanish, and it
Wow.
was a whole bunch of gumbo that was mixed up into that. Then I joined the military, so there's another jargon with like speaking in the military and stuff like that. So I totally identify with what you're saying. What I would like to talk about a little bit is, you're one of the first guests that I've ever had that said they've like seen things or experienced things. Can you tell us a little bit about like what was that like? Because for to hear that from somebody firsthand is one experience that I would like to know about.
Yeah, sure. There was a few different levels of it because first of all, I could see energy around people. So I could see people's auras, not just the colors, but there were different shapes and different other things that I could see, the
Hmm.
types of energies, whether it was static energy or sometimes it's past life energy that's leaking through or whatever. And when I would talk about the colors, um, the biggest thing was when I could see these colors around people and they would morph and they would change, and the interactions between people would change those colors around. The biggest awakening that I had was, I think I was around 7 years old, and we were in church, and I saw the priest, and his color was always purple. So to me, it was fascinating because everybody else was changing all the time, and he never did. And then all of a sudden, he was green, all green. So I had asked my mom, "Mom, how come Father John is green today, and he's always purple?" And she was like, "What? You see color around people?" And that's when, she started asking me, "Well, what do you see around this person? What do you see around that person?" And I realized very quickly that, okay, I'm not the same, that this
Mm.
isn't normal. So, and because I recognize it's not normal, then it's once again, be quiet. Don't talk about it. Don't be an embarrassment to the family.
I could see how people would be like, "You're weird, something, you're off a little bit," and how that could make you feel like an outcast a little bit. You know, as you're telling me that, so interestingly, I went to a session yesterday for energy therapy, and I put on one of those things over my eyes, and they had one of those things over my ears, and I went through the session for about 2 hours, intermittently doing different things. And then I came out of there and we were sitting down, we were talking, and and I told her what I was seeing and what I was experiencing. So I was experiencing some different white lights. I was seeing some things from when not when I served, but like some people from like Vietnam era, seen some things from like slavery. I seen
Wow.
a green color and a brown color and all of these different things while I was there and going through this session. And it was like an awakening moment, as in like this is nothing I've ever experienced before, but I've never actually outwardly told people like things that I'm going through and stuff like that. And she was able to like tell me like, okay, well, this color means this means that. This is from like ancestry years ago. Some of these things are being revealed to you and stuff like that. So it's interesting just to even like have that experience. So it's amazing that I'm talking to you today to share that with you now.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that you mentioned like the different colors and everything like that. And when you don't understand it, it's just, oh, there's all these colors. And
Right.
then you start to see patterns and things, which then helps to understand people better. So what ended up happening is I got a really great understanding of people, what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what makes them tick, what they're understanding and what they're not understanding, what they're lying about and what they're not lying about.
Mhm.
And it, even though I kind of always felt in that space of a little bit on the outsider, I also got along with everyone. So it was a very weird and dichotomous sensation of getting along with everyone, but never really getting super close to a particular group of people, especially in the high school years. So I kind of always stayed in this space of, yeah, I'm friendly and associate with everyone, but I'm still kind of, here's Nicole on the outer realm.
So, you know, a lot of people would think stuff like this is, the lady used the term yesterday, woo woo. So I uh, I was talking to her and I was saying like for some people that come up through different religious backgrounds and things like that, if you was to read the Bible, there's quite a few things in it that's pretty interesting. If you was to actually read it, that some people might think would be woo woo as well too. And
Absolutely.
we were discussing that and going back and forth about that conversation. I wanted to touch on something for you though, because you experienced quite a bit of trauma in your life. You know, as a kid at 16 years old, you went through a mercury poisoning, and I don't think that's something that should be even looked over because that's a traumatic experience. Can you tell us a little bit about how that occurred, what happened, and then how did you even get through that to get past that?
Okay, I'll just make a little correction because I was a
Sure.
chemist for 16 years,
Hmm.
and it was in 2006 that 2006, I had a near death experience. And then between the years of 2008 and 2013, I was exposed to mercury, which led to the mercury poisoning and, almost dying from that.
Hmm.
So I was, in my 30s.
Wow.
And um, what ended up happening was I also have a genetic mutation that I can't process heavy metals.
Hmm.
So when I was exposed to mercury, it was just collecting and collecting and collecting inside my body until it got to my brain. So what happened was during that collection process, I had different ailments that would surface, but it all seemed like minor things or things that you could chalk up to stress. I was in charge of an entire group. I was lead chemist on multiple international campaigns. So there was all this stuff, having to make all these decisions and doing all these other leadership pieces that, oh, it's just stress. And that's especially a woman in that type of role tends to just say, oh, it's just stress. I'll suck it up. I'll figure it out. We're going forward. It's okay. It's going to go away. And sometimes when you ignore stuff, it doesn't just go away, right? And
Right,
that's
right,
what
right.
happened. So that process of falling into that mercury poisoning, it took several years to really build up. But when it hit hard because I was walking into walls. It felt like I was a stroke victim, that not being able to really understand what people were saying. And then it had to process. So it got to the point where I would hear, "Wah, wah, 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 wah," kind of like the Peanuts character teacher.
Really?
Yeah. And
Wow.
then I'd sit there like, what the heck did you just say? So I'd kind of just stare at you until my brain processed it. And then I realized, oh, this is what they said. But in the meantime, I was getting the, Nicole, are you going to answer me? Because usually it's fire off answers quickly
Right.
where we've got tight timelines. We have to make decisions fast. And, I'm talking fast because it's that kind of environment. Like, get it out there. And when I had to slow down to a snail pace and then understanding what you said, I had to formulate a response. And it was hard for me to get the words out because somewhere between those synapses there was blocks in there not allowing the words to go from my brain out of my mouth, and it made life very difficult in all aspects because Mad Hatter syndrome is a very real thing. When something is messing with your brain, it is very, very intense and scary,
Wow.
especially with reaction times. I
So
couldn't
I
drive.
want I want to ask you this because obviously going through this, it has to be super, super traumatic and painful. So when you were able to get help, what was that treatment like? And what was it like to even, I guess, talk a little bit about like how were you able to recover? What were some of the things that you were doing to even get past this, to get through this? Because I've never heard of someone actually going through this, but to hear it, it sounds pretty intense.
It is, because what's happening is your body is slowly being poisoned at deeper and deeper levels, more and
Hmm.
more intense. And when you don't know what it is, it surfaces as so many different things and it mimics all kinds of different ailments. So you can't put a finger on it being mercury poisoning, especially that being a very rare thing that, not something that most medical doctors are, it's at the top of their thought process.
Right, right, right,
So it started off just my hair fell out a little bit, and that had happened before from stress. So there it is. It's just stress.
right,
And
right.
then I was getting in this space where it was harder and harder to get out of bed in the morning. So I was like, I'm just having a lot of stress at my job. I feel a little demotivated. It's just stress. But that not being able to get out of bed was just being tired, and that turned into being tired and completely demotivated to being tired, demotivated, and in massive pain. So it
Wow.
went from anywhere from 15 minutes to like slowly incrementing up to the point where it took me 2 to 3 hours to get out of bed every day. And I had to throw myself onto the floor to make it more painful to land on the floor than to get up and start moving around. So during that process, like all these different things happened all along the way at deeper and deeper levels, to the point where I even was typing up a memo, giving an update on a presentation I was putting together for decisions that we had to make in the pharmaceutical industry. And I'm typing this email and I'm looking, you're typing and you're looking at what you're typing. And I'm like, why is this all gibberish? Check my hands. They're on all the right keys. So I sat back and looked at it because I liked to decode things when I was a kid, and looked at it and finally recognized that I was typing the entire sentence backwards.
Wow.
So I'm thinking forward, typing completely backward. At that point, I was like, something's got to get done. And I had called the doctor, and I went through a year and a half of different testing. So every time something came up, I got tested for something else. And every time everybody told me, everything looks normal, Nicole. And I was not feeling normal at all. So I ended up going and getting my daughter, who was about 2 years old. I was getting her cereal, and I grabbed the milk out and I passed out on the floor. And I woke up and she was kind of tapping my face, Mom, like thinking I'm playing around with her. And it was a game. So when I woke up, I played it off as I was playing the game and realized, oh my God, had I died right there, the trauma that my kids would have gone through with me on the floor. One of my sons was upstairs. I had 4 kids at the time. And so my daughter was the youngest. And then my second youngest was upstairs, and the other 2 were out with their dad. And I realized I'm going to die. I am going to die because nothing is being done and nobody can find anything. And I realized, okay, I've done a lot of intuitive work with people, and now it's time for me to be my own client. And I basically put myself up in a room in my bedroom and said, do not disturb me. Don't bother me at all, because I need to figure this out. And I went intuitively through my entire body and had written down every symptom I had from as far back as I could remember, and just listed everything out and sat there scanning and scanning. And all I kept hearing was mercury. And then I looked up mercury poisoning, and I'm looking at my list saying, I think I have mercury poisoning really bad. So when I called up the doctor, I said, hey, can you test me for mercury poisoning? Because I think that's what I have. And he laughed at me and was like, Nicole, come on. Nobody has mercury poisoning. Nobody gets that these days. And I'm like, well, all these things that I've done and walked around looking like a freak, with all these things coming out of me and electrodes and whatnot, looking like something out of Star Trek. Can we just do a simple blood test and just, amuse me? And he's like, fine. So we did that, and I got a call back saying, you need to get to a specialist immediately. Your levels are ridiculous. I've never seen this before, right? And so when I got to the specialist, he had said, I can't believe that you're sitting here having a conversation with me, Nicole. And at the time, it was so bad that I could barely speak. So I was talking like that, right? So it was super slow, super aggravating. I'm listening to myself going, oh my God, just spit it out. And so I said to him, you call this a conversation? And he said, well, if I put it into perspective, most people with levels as high as yours are either vegetables or dead. And I was like, oh, well, that's not an option. What do we do? Tell me what to do. Let's do it. Let's do it right now, whatever it is. And so I started chelation therapy to answer your question on that. And my other doctor was like, this is controversial and you shouldn't do this. And anyway, my first month, I was doing chelation therapy. I think it was almost a year and a half. And my first month, I doled out about $18,000 in medical expenses.
Wow.
So there was a lot of things that happened like with that, and fighting for my life. It was a huge financial layout that I had to liquidate my retirement assets to save my life, which worth it. Looking back, it's like, oh, I wish that was there, all that time. But at the
Right.
same time, you do what you got to do, because if you're not here, you can't enjoy that either. So guess what? I get to enjoy life.
Obviously, there's a benefit to the trade-off. I do have to ask, I guess, when you were working as a chemist, was any insurance, or did the company ever try to like help you out or cover any of those expenses for you?
This is a delicate and touchy situation to talk about, but I can say this. I had asked, you might have to string some things together, okay? I had
Okay.
asked if they would test, because I tested my home, I tested my kids, I tested everybody in my family, to see if anybody else was being exposed to mercury, like in the home or whatever. So
Right.
I know how much that costs too. And then, as far as, I asked them to test for mercury in my office, where I had been complaining that I was feeling confused, not being able to really focus and do my job. And I got a refusal letter saying it was expensive and they weren't going to do it. So
Wow.
I ended up finding out after I was then lumped into a layoff for a project that got cut that I wasn't even working on. Okay. And had to sign a waiver saying I would not sue the company in order to get my severance package, knowing full well that I was the sole provider for my family of 6. So if you kind of like pull all that stuff together, you might have a story there. With that, so I left the company, and I found out afterwards that the room that was right next door to my office, that they were doing a bunch of HVAC work in, and all this stuff with the ventilation was getting moved around and different things were happening. So when you're dealing with mercury with a 32-year half-life and the vapors from mercury, it's just going to go wherever the air is going, right?
Right.
Now,
Right.
that being said, it was the old thermometer room. So these weren't thermometers with, the new style. This was the old mercury thermometers from back in the day. And
Mm-hmm.
if you have a thermometer room, you have broken thermometers, period.
Right. Man, I that's so devastating, and to know that there was no accountability from the company because they know that it was, to me, I interpret that as they know that there would be a liability risk in regards to helping their employees. I I do wonder, was there any other employees that was exposed in addition to yourself? And because that sounds pretty severe and significant. And then also just add to that, now you're taking on the burden when you just mentioned you had 6 kids,
4
and now you're,
kids.
sorry, I had 4 kids, but now you're forking over all this expense. How stressful was that time for you now?
Yeah, so I'll answer all of those questions. Yeah, 4 kids, and then my husband at the time was disabled. So there were 6 of us, and I was the sole provider. It was extremely harrowing, and the physical taxation that it caused, especially in the chelation therapy. If you look at the chelation therapy, so a lot of people out there probably don't know what chelation is. And what it means is, because I had this genetic mutation that I can't process heavy metals, it means that I need something to carry it away. So if this is the heavy metal that's floating around in my body and, trying to like nestle in different places like my brain and my liver and my kidneys and all the organs and the lungs, I need something that's going to come over and be like the claw and pick it up and then
Hmm.
bring it outside my body. That's what a chelator does. It grabs something and carries it out. So it like nestles it and hides it and brings it out of the body. With that, you are basically stripping away everything, good and bad. So to put it into perspective, I had to carry around a mini suitcase like you would, like a little carry-on bag, right? Like those small ones that you would put under the seat. A carry-on bag about that size with all kinds of GI buffers, all kinds of tinctures, all kinds of supplements and things to protect certain parts of my body, chelate with other elements, and then also add nutrients into my body.
Mhm.
The the supplement or the vitamin that I was taking on a daily basis that I took 2 of every day, I had to take 12 of every day just to try to get back in what was coming out. So I had zero ability to think, act, like physically do anything. Like the emotional state was like extremely rocky. My mental state was like so messed up because it was in my brain, and my physical body was just like at the verge of collapsing at any moment. So to add on anything to fight a huge company for this thing, it was just like all I wanted was to keep my kids safe and maybe ask them, is there something that can be done to help me out here, and not go into that like Sue realm, because that wasn't really me either. And like I just didn't have anything in me to fight besides fight for my life. If I put my energy into something else, I felt like I was going to die. I was literally at that edge. So I hope that answered all of your questions. I think there might have been one in there that I didn't.
No, it did. I'm listening to what you're saying, and it's so tumultuous because now you also mentioned that you're trying to do all these things, and it sounds like you had to start making some other decisions now. So it sounded like you went through a divorce at some particular point. Then you had to make a decision career-wise too. So what am I going to do next? Because they just gave you a severance package. You just spent all this money. So if you can talk a little bit about now, what's next? What's the next decision that you got to start making in regards to continue on this journey of the new version of yourself that you're looking towards?
Yeah, great question there, Michael. Thank you. So the first thing was, okay, I'm in this position. I'm knocked down. I'm kicked down. I'm beat up. And it everything was falling apart. So even, it gets to your brain, you're not yourself. You'll do and say things that it's kind of like, think about somebody who's so inebriated and they're saying stuff, and whether things may be true or not true, most of the times it's not even true. They're just blabbermouthing stupid stuff. And if you take it as real, then relationships die. So relationships were dying off. I wasn't able to be there for everybody like I had been. Like I was the one who took care of everybody, right? And now I had to rely on all these people to help me out, even drive. I couldn't drive. And it was a huge ego slap, right? To say the
Mhm.
least. And I had to get into this place where, okay, everything else has fallen apart, but my hope was there, and my faith in myself was there, even just enough. It was kind of in the space of, all right, I'm committed to. So there was decision one. Do you commit to living, or do you want to give up and just die? And I was not about to give up living. And this is Tony.
Hey,
so
Tony.
so when I committed to just fighting for my life and doing that thing, through that process, I was like, okay, how do I keep myself in these good spirits? Because I had to be in a good mindset in order to continue on. And that is what started my ability to really make things happen. I locked into my intuition. I followed that. I didn't follow what everyone else was telling me because it wasn't aligned with who I was or what I wanted to do. It was just everybody saying, you need to do this and you should do that. I don't like to hear need to and should. Suggestions are great, but your way isn't always the right way. And if it's not aligned with who I am, then I can't do it. So I just started following that, and piece by piece kept coming back and coming back. And that turned into me being able to inspire other people, like, how are you doing this, Nicole? And I'd be like, well, let me tell you how I'm doing this. And a lot of it is one day at a time, one moment at a time, one decision at a time. And the career change you asked about, yeah, when I left chemistry, I took some time to recover and, focus on me. I had to say, forget everyone else and focus on myself. So I did that. I ended up going back to work. I couldn't go back to chemistry. There was just something there. It was just too traumatic to go back. And then I ended up becoming a financial advisor for a bunch of years. That was awesome because I got to work with people in a capacity to really hone in on their money personalities and their fears and things around money. Through all that time that I was working on myself, I worked on all of my fears because I had to. I had no other chance than to overcome every fear that came up. And that's the alchemy of transformation system that I created to help other people do that. I did that while I was a financial advisor. I was more of a coach, like a financial coach, because I educated people. I let them see what their fears are. I connected them with something outside of their fears that's a solution, and then with their help, because that was the thing that made them see they are the one in charge and empowered to do what it is they want to do with their future. So that's what I help people do. Overcome fears, become authentic, align with your truth, your passion, your purpose, your divine identity, really, and just be that person and allow life to just unfold around you with ease and no more overwhelm.
Nicole, I love your story so much, and to for someone that has walked through your shoes and to now is helping people through your story and through your journey and developing a life of transformation. Can you talk a little bit more about like your company, right, and what you guys are doing, the services that you guys are offering, and if you want to share a testimonial on some people that you have worked with, please
Okay.
do so.
Oh, thank you. All right. So, in a nutshell, I basically meet people where they are. I uncover whatever blocks are happening in their lives, because a lot of times we think we're clear about what we want, and it is as unclear as a mud puddle that's just disastrous.
Mhm.
And we think that's clear, and we're not being clear. So I help people to really step outside of that muddy water and see that there is this clarity that they can have. Focus on that clarity, align with who they truly want to be, because we have within us this identity to unlock, but we don't know who that is because we've buried it for so long, and we've buried it around these beliefs that mask all the things of who we are in a very, very deep level, that divine purpose level. So once we start uncovering that, I actually had one of my clients just sent me something this morning about, it's kind of like mining.
Mm.
Nicole does this. She's a facilitator, she's a mentor, she's a teacher, she's a trainer, she's a safety professional. It keeps you safe in that guidance space to help you build a framework as you go when you don't know what you're doing. So in order to mine something, you've got to dig a little bit and build a framework, dig a little bit deeper, build the framework, dig a little bit deeper, build that framework, and keep going. And then all of a sudden, she said, if you're mining gold, you pick up these little gold nuggets along the way, and you're, oh my God, here we are. And then and then you dig some more, you might find some more gold, and oh my God, yeah, this is great. And then you dig, and this is where she's like, this is where your magic is, Nicole, is that you dig and you might find a diamond or a sapphire or a ruby or whatever, an emerald, and you realize, I wasn't just digging for gold, I was digging for all these great things. And so it's so much more. So I help you uncover the diamonds when you think you're digging for something else. And another person had said, it's all about overcoming the things that are holding you back, whether it's fears, procrastination. It all ties into the beliefs. And a lot of people get stuck in, lack of productivity, lack of motivation, lack of knowing what their purpose is, because they're not aligned and they haven't uncovered those things that do hold them back, that's locked into muscle memory. We can
Right.
shift our perspective up here in our mind, but to unlock it in the muscle memory, that takes some technique and some strategy, and that's what I do is I help you map that out. So get the clarity and focus, align with your divine purpose, and then actually create the results driven action plan to solidify that and make it easy to unfold. That's what I do.
Awesome. So Nicole, if anybody wanted to like work with you, get you on their podcast, get you for a speaking engagement, how can they get a hold of you?
They can get a hold of me at the connect with me side of my website, Magic LLC, spelled like my last name, MAJIKLLC.com. And, or you can just email me at magic@magicllc.com.
Absolutely. Well, Nicole, thank you so much for being a guest on our show. Before we get out of here, can you leave with our audience some actionable steps that they could impart into their lives now today? Because to hear your story of being so resilient and fighting through so many things when you could have easily given up on life, you could have easily quit, you could have I think of hearing other people's story when they've either lost their job, some things are going on with their family, some things are going on with their spouses, and they think it's the end of the world, and you did not do that. So if you can share with our audience some things that some key takeaways that they could impart into their lives.
Yeah, and I will say I've been through a couple of these different instances where it feels like every single thing is crashing down around you. First of all, it gets easier with each time because you recognize different things along the way. So I'm going to reveal that right now. When you are going through these times that are trials and tribulations, and it feels like everything is working against you, where there is pain, there is resistance. Where there is resistance, there is pain. The best thing that you can do is just surrender and allow yourself to receive a message of understanding of what to do next. Because where we resist, we create more pain. Where there is pain and we follow that, we're going to find the resistance. So if we're trying to create something and control it, there are 3 things everybody needs in order to feel fulfilled in their life. It's safety and security is one. We all want to feel safe and secure in every area of our life.
Yep.
The second thing is love. So love, acceptance, belonging. So we all want to feel that. And then the third is to be empowered. When we're not feeling empowered, we try to control everything. And that's where everything kind of falls apart. And these 3 things, they dovetail into each other. So if you feel like there's all this turmoil and all that, start picking it apart and really paying attention to where is that lack, because that's the things where we start off with and what to uncover and then start that deep dive. So if things are falling apart around you, what's happening is that foundation no longer serves you, and you have ignored the fact that the universe has given you some opportunities, and now you have a bigger opportunity to stop and listen and create the life that you love living. So in that, it's know that sometimes we have to demolish something to rebuild something greater. And that's what you're doing in your life. So if you can just look at it like that, just even for 5 minutes a day, that you are creating something new and allowing this destruction to happen so you can reconstruct. There's where the magic is.
Thank you so much, Nicole, for being a guest on the Overcome University podcast. This was absolutely amazing. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Guys, if you like this episode, make sure you leave a message. But most importantly, share with the family, share with a loved one, share with a friend. Until next time, God bless.
Can't complain at all. Couple dollars in my pocket, no income and go. Been working on my body, getting healthier. Thank God for clarity.